The following is a presentation of iRacing.com Motorsports Simulations on LSRTV, the voice of sim racing.
Good evening, sim racing fans, and welcome to those of you watching on Facebook Live and YouTube. This is LSRTV's coverage of the RealSimRacing.com Full Throttle Cup Series, presented by Gary Mercer Trucking. Live tonight from the nation's heartland, the Kansas Speedway in Kansas City, Kansas. Here for our 32nd race of the 2017 season. I am James Pike. Alongside me in the booth is Mr. Brian Macklin. And down in our virtual production trailer, punching buttons, is the ever-lovely, ever-talented Cisco Siramusa. And Macklin, tire wear, changing lanes, speed. There's a lot of stuff that seems like it should be standard with the repave and the rescanning of this track that came in not too long ago in the sim. But even so, this is a mile and a half with a lot of variation, and a lot of weird things can happen here.
This is one of the most exciting tracks to race on from a driver's perspective, because you can start off at the bottom of the racetrack, and as the tires wear out, you'll gradually start moving up towards the wall, and as the tires really get wore out, you're going to go right up against that wall and basically be running like you would at Darlington, just a couple of inches off the wall. I can't wait to watch this race. It should be a really exciting race. And we can't forget, James, tonight is the elimination race for the playoffs. Tonight they go from 12 playoff contenders to 8, and there's a couple of guys back there that really need a win or a good race to make it in.
And I will point you to the guys in particular from 7th on back. Nick Silver, Andrew Freenars, Lionel Callisto, Brandon Bowie. 5 points separate those 4 drivers. So could be a lot of shuffling right around the edge of the bubble today. Then you've got Shane Ewing, who is 5 points back of Brandon Bowie. And then Dwayne Vincent, who is 20 points back of Shane Ewing. For Vincent, it's a must-win. For Ewing, it's probably almost a guaranteed top 10, probably a top 5. But for everybody else, it might as well just be heads up, because it's going to be close.
It's going to be absolutely wild to see what happens, and track position is going to be the key. And if you look at a couple of these guys that need that good run here in qualifying, they didn't get it. Dwayne Vincent starting all the way back in 17th, Shane Ewing back in 14th. A couple of these guys really need some help here tonight.
And while you mention the grid, let's go ahead and jump to tonight's LSRTV starting grid, which is led off by the number 88 of Andrew Freenars. Qualifies top of the board with a 29.592 fastest lap. Outside of him in that Aegis PowerTech Alliance conglomerate is the 98 of David Washington, who won last week at Talladega. Anthony DeBarra will start from the 3rd position tonight. Corey Wolf rolls off from 4th. Dylan Jones will begin from 5th. Daniel Eberhardt will go from 6th. Eric Stanford starts 7th tonight. David Comstock will begin from 8th. Lionel Callisto 9th. And Brandon Bowie rounds out your top 10.
Starting in the 11th position tonight is Carl Shedd, and then to his outside we have Seth DeMerchant starting in the 12th position. Ross Cato will start 13th, then one of our playoff contenders, Shane Ewing, is 14th. Trevor Roppolo is 15th. Then we have Nick Silver in 16th. Dwayne Vincent will roll off 17th. Tanner Tallarico is 18th. 19th goes to Sean Casto, and 20th goes to Austin Coop.
Rest of the grid is as follows: Gabe Wood, Dakota Bowman, Bruce Pearson, Chris Murdoch, Nelson Rivera, Chris Hurlow, Mitch Rollo, John Abbott, Douglas Wyatt. The rest of your starting field for tonight's race at Kansas, which will go for 125 laps at a mile and a half per lap, which means we'll go for 187.5 miles in total. 17 to 20 degrees of progressive banking in the corners. That gets higher as you go further up the track. Same can be said for the front stretch here. 9 to 11 degrees of banking, a flat 5 on the back straightaway for this final race of the round of 12 in the 2017 RealSimRacing.com Full Throttle Cup Series playoffs. Green flag now out from Kansas. Farinos jumps off to a good start. They come down to the apron and cut the track a little bit to begin tonight's race at Kansas. He'll jump up, jump out, go high, and get down to the bottom pretty quickly. And then Washington jumps to second, DeBarro third, Wolf fourth. Looks like Dylan Jones tried to get clear of Corey Wolf there for the fifth spot, but he got loose on corner exit, so that'll give a boost to the outside lane here, and Wolf will be able to ride the high line, which for the most part is where you want to be here at Kansas as they come through turn 4 for the first time tonight.
You will see for a couple of laps these guys be able to work the bottom of the racetrack while they have fresh tires, but once the grip begins to fade in those tires, expect everybody to go up against the wall and stay there. You see Dylan Jones right ahead of Corey Wolf. He's already down at the bottom of the racetrack. He's trying to make it work. However, he's not close enough to really make a move on the guy in front of him. He's just hanging on, but you can see the momentum that Corey Wolf was able to carry off the high line, and he's up top again, and this time he might be able to get to the outside of Dylan Jones. Indeed, he will. Coming off turn 4, Corey Wolf is going to make the move, and it looks like he's going to be able to make the pass. They're still side by side as they head back to turn 1.
Good run for Wolf there in the back straightaway. Give it a few laps. I have a feeling he'll probably be in good shape to make it up to the top 4 there once he clears Jones. Now, Jones slipping back even more. Lionel Kalisto gets clear of him. David Comstock now trying to get around the 11. He may have a hole behind Comstock if he jumps up quick enough in front of his teammate Carl Shedd in the 45, but he can't even get there. So Shedd will go to the outside, probably have Jones clear within the next lap, and then Daniel Eberhardt will be next in line, and then Eric Stanford. So you got teammates there, but someone's got to let Dylan Jones in, because the more he runs the bottom of this racetrack, the harder he's going to have to push his tires, and the worse that car is going to be in a long green flag run. But Eric Stanford does his teammate a favor and gets them all in. But then again, Jones goes back to the bottom. So they're all over the place.
Right now, it looks like Dylan Jones has committed himself to the bottom of the racetrack. I was watching him in practice a little bit before the race, and he seemed like he was very comfortable down there. However, right now, it's not working for him. As he started in 5th, and just 5 laps in, he's already out of the top 10. As he's getting passed now by Ross Cato, that would be for the 10th position. He would fall back to 11th. So this inside line is just not working for him right now, and he's got another one of his teammates right there in the number 9 of Trevor Roppolo trying to get around him. He's also going to make that move, and then here comes Dwayne Vincent, who is in a must-win situation. Finishing 10th is not going to get him in. He has to go for the win. Expect that 13 car to be really aggressive here in this race tonight.
Another guy that might be aggressive here in a little bit is the 98 of David Washington, who now is all over the rear bumper of his teammate. So Washington with the speed again early on in the run. We've seen a lot of that from the 98 in the second half of this season, and might not be too long here before we have our first battle for the lead of the evening. They've both driven away from Anthony DeBarro by about half a second, and Washington continuing to put the pressure on his teammate as they go into 1.
And he is right there as they come off the corner. You can see he carries some good momentum through the middle of the corner, but Freenars was able to carry the speed off the corner and is able to keep that gap just over about a car length and a half over David Washington, and he's trying to maintain that gap. He doesn't want to let him get him too close because he doesn't want to give up an opportunity for David to possibly take the lead away from him. These two are running really hard right now at the beginning of this race, but they're not getting too close to the wall, James. I've noticed both these guys are staying about a half a groove away from the wall. Expect these guys to move up just a little bit closer to that wall once the tires begin to wear out.
And then it becomes a risk-reward game. How close do you run to the wall? How much are you willing to risk in order to get that extra 10th or 2 off your lap? And are you willing to smack the wall and ruin your race? That's the key that all of these drivers are going to have to manage. But in the meantime, Farinas is doing a decent job of managing Washington. The real battle here might be back in the 7th spot. You've got Carl Shedd and Daniel Eberhardt running nose to tail at the moment, but Eberhardt doing the same thing that Washington's doing to Farinas, putting the pressure on the car ahead of him.
Right now it looks like everybody's running up against the wall, and that includes Daniel Eberhardt and Lionel Kalisto and everybody up here inside of the top 10 right now as Eberhardt gets closer and closer to the back bumper of Carl Shedd. And you can see Carl, he's running right up against that wall in the middle of 3 and 4. He got really close to the wall, almost made contact with it. That's what you're going to expect to see these guys do the longer this run goes. Once they get another 10 to 15 laps on the tires, that's where they're going to have to run in order to find speed to carry the momentum off the corner. Now Eberhardt's right up against the wall. He looks like he's going to try to make a move to the outside. outside of Carl Shed, but can't quite get there, didn't have the run off the corner to make that move. It's going to be a lot easier for him to do down the front stretch in any case, because you actually have the open track to the outside of the car that you can do that off turn 2, right up against the wall. There's really nowhere to go. But you can see Eberhardt, he stays right on the back bumper of Carl Shed. Now it looks like he's going to make a dive to the inside, but he just can't quite get there, and now he is to the inside of Carl Shed, and it looks like he's going to complete the pass.
Shed just lets him go. That's the benefit of racing a teammate here. He recognizes that Eberhardt's got the speed and just decides to let him move on. So Eberhardt now goes up to 7th. Shed back to 8th. Stanford sitting in 9th. And then you've got a really big battle here. The aforementioned Dylan Jones, who slid back from 5th to 13th. Right there running with Dwayne Vincent, another one of the playoff contenders who, as you mentioned, has to win for all intents and purposes. It's mathematically possible for him to make it through without winning, but realistically, he's going to have to find a way to the front and win this race. But so far, so good. Started 17th. He's up 5 spots from the beginning of the race to 12th.
And while that was going on, we did have a change for position up inside the top 5. David Comstock was able to get around Corey Wolf to take the 4th position away, and as quickly as he's passed him, he has drove away. And now right behind these guys, we have another battle as Lionel Kalisto and Daniel Eberhardt are going at it for the 6th and 7th position. Eberhardt looked to the inside of Kalisto for a moment, didn't quite have the run that he needed, so he backed off and got back in line. But these two are really starting to heat things up back here behind Corey Wolf, and this is a battle for Lionel Kalisto as well, because he's outside of the playoff cutoff right now by just 2 points. Only 2 points right now. But the problem is the guy that he's chasing is leading the race. He's got to get up there, James, and be more aggressive to try to take those points away and see if he can't advance into the next round.
That's the thing, and that's the key. You may be completely out of it on pace if you're not too careful, and then it just becomes a question of how well do you race the likes of Brandon Bowie, who is mired back in the 23rd spot at the moment, had a big shunt there on the opening lap going into turn 3 and had to gather it up, kept the car clean, but now is in a position to where he would most definitely be out of things here and wouldn't even have a chance to race his way back into it. Also looking for the 24 Nick Silver, who currently sits in the 15th position. Right now, I think that would be enough to slide Kalisto in over Silver. It's a 4-point gap from Silver to Kalisto. So big blocking move there, though, from the 90. My goodness, Eberhardt got clear and got around Kalisto, and Kalisto just about tried to run under the apron. Eberhardt was having absolutely none of it.
Yeah, very aggressive move by Eberhardt, but it paid off big for him as he's able to drive away from Kalisto and Carl Shed now. And we do see, I'm looking back a little bit further, Dylan Jones, he's staying committed to the bottom of the racetrack, James, and now that we're about 15 laps into this run, he is starting to make his way back forward. He was able to get around Dwayne Vincent. Now he's working his way past Trevor Rapolo, and he is closing on Ross Cato and in the number 19 machine, Eric Stanford. He's really making that bottom line work. I'm very surprised at this because I really thought the outside line would be the preferred groove, but he seems to have found something down there. Might be why he was spending so much time down there during the practice session. He must have knew that line was going to eventually come in, and it's working. And now we have a battle in front of these guys as Kalisto and Carl Shed are going at it, and Carl Shed's going to try to take that position away.
Shed down to the bottom will try and slide up in front of the 97, who got really tight off the corner, nearly smacked the outside retaining wall. So there goes Shed up another spot. Will have the 7th spot and will try and chase down his teammate Daniel Eberhardt, who is trying to run down Corey Wolf in the 16 machine. All of those spread out by about a second. Big battle though behind them, though. Kalisto may have a little bit of front end damage from that ordeal because now he's under fire from 2 Aegis drivers and Ross Cato. They're all within about 3 car lengths.
And Dylan Jones stays right on the bottom of the racetrack all the way around, and Eric Stanford has a moment coming off the corner, almost wrecks it. He got sideways coming off the corner, had to check up. That caused for Ross Cato and Dylan Jones both to scatter. He was able to hang on, and now he's going to try to carry that momentum to stay ahead of Ross Cato, and it looks like he's going to make it happen. A very scary moment for the number 19 machine, and could have been a scary moment for Dylan Jones as well. Fortunately for him, though, nothing happened, and he's able to continue to advance forward, and now he sets his sights on the number 97 of Lionel Kalisto down to the bottom of the racetrack, and it looks like he's going to make that move work and almost clears them as they come off the corner. He's going to have to try one more time down here in 3 and 4, and he goes to the bottom once again, and this time he's going to complete the pass.
Not quite complete yet, but now he goes. I think Kalisto just looks tight at the moment. Really, really tight. That car's not getting a good bite at all on quarter exit, and that's where everybody else is beating him and getting runs on him. So I definitely think that the 97 will most likely look to loosen that car up by at least a round or two on the wedge when they come into pit the first time.
And it looks like he's also going to have to get some damage repaired as well, because he's got some right front damage, which is not going to help the aerodynamics and is certainly not going to help his tight condition at all, and is going to hurt him here. And now he's got to start being a little bit aware of what's going on around him. He had a pretty good gap over Nick Silver not too many laps ago when he was up around the 6th position, but now he's only got him by about 7 points on the racetrack, or 7 positions on the racetrack. He has to beat him by at least 4. We're still early in the race, but that's something he has to be aware of as we get further into this thing. He cannot afford to give up too much track position to Nick Silver. It could potentially be the make or break moment in his season and his hopes for a championship.
Trying to make it into the round of 8. Just ahead of that, though, 2 battles which look like they're shaping up. One will be for the 3rd spot. David Comstock has run down Anthony DeBarro, and a yellow flag comes out to break everything up. And that will change everything. Here is Nelson Rivera is the one that goes around.
And it looks like he had some issues coming off turn 4. He was running the bottom of the racetrack, got into the wall coming off the corner, just pushed up and hit the wall, and then spun it around and hit the outside wall a couple more times. Looks like it was a single car wreck, nobody else involved. So unfortunate for Nelson Rivera, but very fortunate for everybody that was around, and brings out our first caution of the evening. And James, it's been a pretty eventful 22 laps so far, 23 laps so far. Can't imagine it's not going to be anything different when we go back green next time.
Well, and I think we also need to make note of the fact that Shane Ewing just missed Nelson Rivera there, getting through that mess. And Shane is one of the playoff contenders at the moment. Has some work to do, currently running in the 23rd position, so it wouldn't be enough to get him into the round of 8. But with the way things have bounced around the front, I think a lot of things can happen, and we may have some issues that pop up here on this round of pit stops, because I would expect everyone to come in. It will be very, very busy down on pit road.
Yeah, Andrew Freenar's leading the field to pit road, and he stacks them up as they come into the pits. It looks like he had to slow down to make sure he wasn't going to be speeding, and it could have been a mess for a couple of guys right there, including his teammate David Washington and Anthony DeBarro, but they all sorted out, and now they're working their way to pit road, or to their pit boxes for their first round of pit stops for the evening. Looks like David Comstock's going to be the first one to come to the attention of his pit crew. Slides through just a little bit on the 42. He's going to have to back it up, and that's going to cost him some time, could cost him some track position here. Have to wait and see what happens there. Everybody else, though, made it into their pit boxes cleanly, and now they are looking for their 4 tires and fuel. You got to have a flawless stop here, and it looks like for the 88 of Andrew Freenars, he will win the race off of pit road. And David Comstock got away with one, James. He still comes out where he was running in 4th.
Freenars, and then Washington, and then DeBarro, and then Comstock. Corey Wolf will lose a spot to Daniel Eberhardt as they come out of pit road, and then Dylan Jones will jump ahead of Carl Shedd. So Shedd will go back to the 8th spot. Lionel Kalisto holds position, as does Eric Stanford in that 19 machine.
Very interesting there for those guys, and how about the flawless stops there for everybody at the front of the field. You cannot make any mistakes, especially in this playoff race, this elimination race. For a lot of these guys, they have to just get the job done, and everybody was able to do it. And I want to talk about Dylan Jones for a second, James, too, because he stayed committed to the bottom of the racetrack pretty much the entire run at the beginning of this race. And towards the beginning of the run, it didn't work out for him, but as the laps wore on, he was able to really start making some ground. Might be something these other guys need to pay attention to. That bottom line might have something in it that nobody has really figured out other than that 11 car.
Maybe. But while we have a moment, we'll go ahead and remind you that tonight's coverage of the RealSimRacing.com Full Throttle Cup Series here on LSRTV is brought to you by Hippie's Paint Shop. Hippie's Paint Shop has over 5 years of experience providing top quality custom paint schemes for all iRacing vehicles at a low price. Because after all, at Hippie's Paint Shop, the cost isn't high, just the painter. And a big night for them, because they've got Dwayne Vincent on board, a long time partner of Hippie's Paint Shop, and he is racing for his playoff life. Just about needs to win this race in order to advance. Still up 5 spots from where he started, but he's kind of just held himself at the 12th position, especially through the second half of that first run. Didn't really advance to the field, so we'll see if the fresh tires help out the 13, but he's got no choice but to go for it tonight. He's got to find a way to get up towards the front of this field.
Yeah, it's going to be a long battle for a couple of those guys, as you mentioned. Shane Ewing, Brandon Bowie, both outside of the top 20 right now. Actually, Brandon Bowie currently scored in the 20th position. So for a couple of these guys that are already on the outside looking in, and Nick Silver as well back there, they have to start working their way closer to the front of the field in order to give themselves a chance. This works out really well for a guy like Lionel Callisto, though. The guys that he's racing for the playoff spot are way behind, and if he can keep that, he would currently be in the round of 8 and have an opportunity to go try to race in Homestead. So definitely going to work out for him if this thing stays the way it is, but we've still got a lot of racing left to do, and he's got to keep his car clean. We already saw a little bit of damage on the front end of that number 97 machine. He can't afford to have any more mistakes like that if he expects to move on to the next round.
Goes back to the risk-reward point that we made a little bit earlier. How hard are you willing to push, especially on corner exit here? Callisto's the first man who's already suffered a little bit. It's not a lot of damage, but it's enough to be noticeable, and it's enough to affect that car ever so slightly. And we'll see if that ends up affecting him at all, or if that ends up being the difference between him advancing into the round of 8 and his playoff hopes ending here tonight. Foreigners, Washington, DeBarro, Comstock, Eberhardt, Wolf, Jones, Shed, Callisto, Stanford. Your top 10 for this restart to come on lap 27. Foreigners goes off well, as does Washington. DeBarro didn't get the greatest of jumps, and neither did Comstock, who's down pinching on the bottom, trying to make sure that he doesn't get overtaken by the 90 machine of Daniel Eberhardt. Dylan Jones now to the bottom now. Corey Wolf up on the top side of a 3-wide sandwich as Callisto nearly comes up the track and nearly got into Carl Shed. Did a nice job to kill Shed's momentum, though, so I guess it worked out for Callisto in the end, but it was close on the exit of turn 2.
That was a scary moment for several drivers, and for Corey Wolf, he's fighting with some damage now because going off into turn 1 on the restart, he made contact with the outside wall and has some real heavy right side damage on that car. That's what caused all this checkup and has pushed him all the way back to the 11th position here. But right in front of him, we've got a battle going on as Carl Shed dives to the bottom of the racetrack. He's trying to take that position away from Sean Casto, but just didn't quite have the momentum that he needed, and now he's going to slot back in line on the outside line as they head to turn 3. It looks like everybody through the field right now has made their way to the outside line. Even Dylan Jones right now is running up against the wall, so you have to believe maybe he learned something from that last start. Running the bottom at the beginning of the run, it really hurt his track position, so he's going to run up top for a little while, and then maybe he'll move back down to the bottom of the racetrack.
You've got the train race going on now up through the top 10. Best battle at the front of the field takes you right back to David Comstock and Anthony DeBarro, who were pretty close to one another right before that first caution came out. Comstock now sitting about 2 car lengths behind the 99 machine, but he was able to press once the tires got up to temperature, and we started putting a few laps on them in the middle of that last run. We'll see if the same thing happens here as this run goes through its cycle, but for the moment, DeBarro actually showing a little bit of speed in the early stages of this green flag portion of the race. Been able to gap Comstock by about 2 or 3 car lengths, and now he looks like he might be ready to fall into the clutches of Daniel Eberhardt.
Yeah, Comstock is one of those drivers. He just likes the long green flag runs. He doesn't show a lot of speed on the short run, but if you get him a longer run, 15, 20, 30 laps, he really starts to show up, and he was beginning to show up at the end of that run that we just had before the caution came out, and I expect he's probably expecting to do the same thing on this run. And as for Anthony DeBarro, he won here 2 years ago, James. He knows how to get around this place, and he's out for blood. He just wants to get a win, and we have a battle going on around Carl Shed once again as he's trying to make something happen back there with his teammate Eric Stanford, and he's got Dwayne Vincent right in front of him.
That's really where the best battles are happening on track, right there towards the edge of the top 10. You've got Lionel Callisto, Seth DeMerchant, Dwayne Vincent's right up in that mess. I think I saw Sean Casto fighting for position there as well. So they're all trying to sort themselves out and around, trying to find a way through all of this. Vincent now has come up a few more positions, up to the 9th position now, so continuing the march that he had to make tonight in order to have any shot at the playoffs. It's a big race for him. Next on the list will be the 57 of Seth DeMerchant.
And Dwayne Vincent is driving like it's the race of his life right now. He started back in the 17th position, and he is charged up inside of the top 10, and he has to. He's so far out on points. While you mentioned he can make it in on points, it's almost impossible. He knows that his best chance is just to get up there and try to win this race and make sure that he's going to advance into the round of 8 by doing so. And he is on his way as he's chasing down Seth DeMerchant, as you mentioned. He's back about a car length back from him right now, and he is driving the wheels off that thing, just doing everything he can to try to get as close to the front and get up there and challenge those guys. And he just continues to get closer and closer now. As you see, he closes the gap on Seth DeMerchant. Now he's right on the back bumper. Is he going to be able to make the move down here in turn 3?
Might not be the first move that happens on track, though, because here comes Daniel Eberhardt to the outside of David Comstock, who has just not seen the car like the changes they made on pit road at all. It has not been as good on this run as it was before he came down for service. He's fallen away from the clutches of Anthony DeBarro and now has fallen behind Daniel Eberhardt, who goes up to the 4th spot. Dylan Jones will be next on the list. He's recovered nicely after that torrid start where he dropped back outside of the top 10, but Jones now back up into the 6th position and should be fighting for 5th with Comstock if Comstock doesn't pick up the pace here within the next few laps.
Yeah, Dylan Jones is starting to close that gap now, as well as Lionel Kalisto and Seth DeMerchant right behind them. These guys are all starting to close in on the number 42 machine. And as you mentioned, just that 42 doesn't look as happy right now. It just seems like he's struggling with a little bit of a tighter condition than he had on the first run, and he's just trying to hang on at this point. Fortunately for him, he's got enough points to where he's pretty safe as far as making it into the next round. Can't afford a big mistake, but he doesn't have to get up there and challenge these guys for a win. A solid top 5, top 10 will do it for that number 42 machine, and that's exactly what he's trying to do here, and just trying to escape this thing cleanly. But Dylan Jones, he's already got a win this season. He wants to get or in this round, he wants to get another one.
Yeah, 2 really accomplished drivers in this field up to this point. Comstock's got more wins in 2017 than anybody else in this field besides David Washington, and Jones, as you mentioned, already into the next round by virtue of his win at Charlotte. So both of those guys, I think you can expect to see in the round of 8. Comstock has more points than anybody else in the playoffs who's yet to win in the round of 12 too. So they've had very, very strong runs up into this point. So looking here and hearing that Anthony DeBarro may have clipped the wall a few moments ago up in turn 3, and I do see a little bit of right front damage on the 99 machine. It's not significant, but he's definitely knocked the fender flare in a little bit on that Chevrolet, so we'll see if that affects the handling of that car. But as we mentioned already tonight, another driver who's tried to gamble as much as he could to get the maximum amount of speed through the corner on that car, and he's already clipped the wall, and you just can't afford to tear your car up too much early on in the race because it will sink your evening. And we'll be watching Lionel Kalisto in particular to see whether or not it's a move that knocks you out of the playoffs altogether.
And right now he's still running pretty well back in the 7th position, but right ahead of him, Dylan Jones has went back to the bottom of the racetrack and was for a moment to the inside of David Comstock, but just wasn't able to carry the momentum, and he fell back about 5 car lengths as they head back into turn 1. Now he goes back to the outside line, so apparently he doesn't feel like the inside line has come back in like it did on the first run, and he's going to stay up there now, but he's got some ground to make up if he's going to get back to the number 42 machine, as he gave up a ton coming off of that corner just about a lap or so ago. And Comstock looks like he's a little bit happier with that car now because he's beginning to run back down Daniel Eberhardt. Looks like that car is finally starting to do what he's needing it to do, as he has closed that gap down to just over half a second, and he's just slowly starting to march his way back towards the front of the field right now. As a matter of fact, he was just a hair quicker than our race leader, about 0.03 of a second quicker than our race leader that last time by, so that car's starting to get better for him, James.
Took long enough for him. Really needed about 15 laps to get the car to really come to his liking. So I might want to try and tweak that, I would think, for some of the later runs in this race. Get a little bit better balance on that machine. But maybe David Comstock's got more speed on this long run, and that might be what he's got this thing geared for, thinking that we probably won't have that many cautions. To his credit, he hasn't been wrong so far. We've only had one over 42 laps, so definitely room for green flag laps in that space of time. But we'll have to get on it and try and run down Daniel Eberhardt, because Eberhardt's made a really, really nice charge so far.
And while that's going on, here's just a couple of updates on some of our playoff contenders for some of these drivers that are on the outside looking in. Brandon Bowie is back in the 19th position right now. Nick Silver is only in the 21st position, and Shane Ewing sits back in 22nd. Nick Silver trying to recover from his issues on pit road during that first caution, and he just hasn't been able to really go anywhere. He restarted 26th, and actually there's a moment going on right in front of Brandon Bowie. It looks like the 00 of Gabe Wood got into the wall. Bowie was able to work around it, and he's going to pass two cars on one straightaway as he gets around Tanner Tallarico and Gabe Wood, and that's going to move him forward into, I believe that would be the 17th position when it's all said and done. But these three drivers are on the outside looking in now, and they can't afford to be staying back here. They've got to find the way to get the speed and get back to the front of the field.
Trying to juggle a little bit of math within my head. Never was my strong suit in school, but as it stands, I think Kalisto would be the one to leapfrog everybody and would be, I think, 7th in points as it stands. Well, actually, no, I take that back. Farinars would be 7th, and then Kalisto would be the last man in. Silver would be the first man out by, I think, 9 points. Is what I've got at the moment. So Silver, if Kalisto continues to run where he is, would need to come up, I think, to the 11th position in order to save his spot, if I've got that correct. And I believe, yes, it would at least need to be 11th in order to run on the tiebreaker.
Yeah, I was actually just trying to pull up the results to see who would win the tiebreaker. 11th would give them the tie. I'm going to pull up the results from the last two races and see who finished higher, because that would be the tiebreaker to make it into the next round. But Lionel Kalisto has to be aware of this situation as well. He's sitting in the 7th position right now, and hopefully he's got somebody telling him what's going on with the guys around him. He doesn't want to try to push this car too hard right now, because if he does, it could potentially take him out of it. So he's got to be really careful here. And it looks like Anthony DeBarro is starting to have some issues with his car now, because he has fallen back to the number 90 of Daniel Eberhardt and the 11 of Dylan Jones, and they are right there ready to pounce, and that would move them up inside of the top 4 if they can both get around the number 99 machine. And Dylan Jones has worked his way back to the bottom of the racetrack, James. He's finally starting to make that inside line work, and you can really see the speed he's able to carry through the center of the corner, gets right on the back bumper of Eberhardt as they come off turn 4.
That'll make for some interesting racing, because he's really the only one at this point who's been able to make the bottom of this racetrack work. And of course, as soon as I say that, Daniel Eberhardt will go down to the bottom to block the 11 machine and maybe to try and copy his line. So we'll see if that does anything. But I think it also is worth noting, it does look like that Anthony DeBarro is struggling for speed. He's lost just a touch of it here within the last few goings. And I look at his lap time since we got back to it. It's been relatively consistent, but it's fallen off significantly here within the last handful of laps, back from a 31.3 to a 31.8. So we'll see if DeBarro can hang on to that 3rd position for the moment, but he's got two very, very hungry Ford Fusions sitting there right behind him.
Indeed he does, and you see Eberhardt make his way to the bottom of the racetrack now. He saw what his teammate was doing. He's going to try to make it work now, but it just doesn't look like he's got the speed that Dylan Jones has. As you can see, they both ran the bottom through 3 and 4, and Jones was able to close right in on the back bumper of Daniel Eberhardt. So Jones either has it figured out better, or Daniel Eberhardt's car just can't work the bottom of the racetrack as well as the 11. Either way, it looks like Dylan Jones definitely has it figured out as he moves to the middle groove through 1 and 2, and now he looks to the inside of Eberhardt as they go down the back straightaway, and it looks like Eberhardt's going to concede the position. Indeed he will, and that will move Dylan Jones up into that 4th position, and now he's going to set his sights on Anthony DeBarro.
So Jones with a lot of pace and has done a really impressive job of driving back up through this field after that very initial green flag. He dropped outside of the top 10. He's now all the way up to 4th, and it looks like, especially with the way that car is rolling through corner exit and the drive it gets off of turns 2 and 4 that Dylan Jones won't need too much time to go catch the rear bumper of Anthony DeBarro. He's right there in his windshield and may just have to hang on and do the best he can because the 11 car is coming with speed towards the front of this field.
Indeed he is, and I was able to pull up the results and figure out the tiebreaker scenario, and in the event of a tie, James, Lionel Kalisto would win the tiebreaker because he had a 6th place finish at Talladega that is better than either of Nick Silver's finishes at Talladega or Charlotte. Nick Silver finished in the 9th position at Talladega and 8th at Charlotte, so if they were to tie, Lionel Kalisto would get it. So for Nick Silver, he can't just assume that he'll get it on a tie. He has to try to make up the points and beat him in the points. So that's an interesting scenario for those guys, and that's something that Lionel Kalisto hopefully is aware of. But we do have a battle going on for third as Dylan Jones on the bottom of the racetrack. He looks to the inside of Anthony DeBarro, and he is trying to take that position away, but DeBarro is not going to give it up as easily as his teammate did. DeBarro tries to stay there but just can't, and Dylan Jones will take the 3rd position away.
Jones with that powerful drive off of corner exit again, getting it done, and that's enough to clear DeBarro. So DeBarro now back to 4th, Jones up to 3rd. Washington next in line, he's 2nd, and he's just kind of sat behind Freenars for this whole race. Hasn't really pressured him all that much, but hasn't been more than about 2 car lengths behind the 88 since we dropped the green flag, and we'll see if Dylan Jones can come up there and shake things up and change the way the front of this field has raced. But back to the point that you made, at this stage, it still means that Nick Silver would have to finish 11th if Kalisto stays where he is. And I guess the 3-point gap would still be there since Kalisto's dropped the spot since we last mentioned him. He's now back in the 8th position. So certainly is not impossible, but he needs more spots, and he's dropped one since the restart. So we're now running in the 18th spot. So gonna have to go find some spots. 7 more to save his skin and get into the round of 8.
And we have a really good battle between Seth DeMerchant and David Comstock back here in the 6th and 7th positions. Seth DeMerchant ran down David Comstock, went to the bottom of the racetrack, and has been able to get to his door, but has not been able to complete the pass. They're side by side as they work down the front straightaway. Seth DeMerchant goes to the apron, trying to carry some speed and see if he can't get a little bit of an advantage, but it's not going to work, and Seth DeMerchant now runs the middle of the racetrack, trying to stay on the inside of David Comstock, and it looks like he's going to carry some good speed up off the corner. Comstock got tight, and that's going to allow Seth DeMerchant to make the move and complete the pass for 6th. Seth DeMerchant moves up, and now he's going to try to set his sights on Daniel Eberhardt, who's only a couple of car lengths ahead of him now. He could potentially be challenging for a top 5 position here in the next handful of laps.
Daniel Eberhardt might be the next man under fire. We'll see what kind of speed that Seth DeMerchant has in that Peterson Irrigation Chevrolet to go get the number 90 machine, but he had enough to go clear David Comstock, and with ease, and now with more pace, because Comstock is very quickly fading in the rear view mirror of the 57 machine. Already about a 5 or 6 car length gap from the rear of the 57 to the front of the 42, and Eberhardt is now only about a car length or 2 ahead of him as we see pit stops here. One man comes in. Sean Casto will come down pit road for service.
And this could be the beginning stages of our first round of green flag pit stops. Sean Casto was running up inside the top 15. Now he's on pit road. And these guys right now are running almost 3 full seconds slower than what they were in practice and qualifying on fresh tires. So you have to believe that once 1 or 2 start coming in, you're going to start seeing the rest of them making their way to pit road as well. These guys definitely can't afford to give up that kind of time. For a guy like Sean Casto, he was far enough behind where it won't really affect too much for the leaders. But if you get one of these guys up inside the top 8 or 9 that are within 4 seconds of the race leader, that could be a big game changer for everybody and make them have to come to pit road in a hurry.
Speaking of game changers, Seth DeMerchant at it again now underneath the 90 machine of Daniel Eberhardt. They'll go side by side through turns 3 and 4. We'll see what kind of run they both get off the corner. DeMerchant slides up, actually carries a decent amount of speed through the center of the corner. Might actually get scored with the spot at the line. He does, and he may just clear Eberhardt here if he plays it correctly. Gets in there, makes it happen, and yes, moves Seth DeMerchant up into the top 5 for the moment. Gets a good drive off the corner. DeBarro's going to be next. He'll be underneath DeBarro when they go into turn 3.
To the inside goes Seth DeMerchant. Can he carry the speed through the middle of the corner? It looks like he's trying to pick the throttle up early, go to the bottom of the racetrack, but not quite going to be able to do it. He's able to get to the left rear quarter panel, but not enough to get to his inside and be able to stay there. Anthony DeBarro has the position right now, but Seth DeMerchant looks like he's going to fight back again. Now he goes back in line on the outside line, and he's going to try to carry some speed through the middle of the corner. Now he cuts down to the middle groove, and he looks to the inside of Anthony DeBarro once again, and this time DeBarro almost gets into the wall, and Seth DeMerchant has to stay behind him for just a moment.
Couldn't tell if that was DeBarro trying to stay off the wall or DeBarro throwing the block, but one of the two was definitely true. 99 really trying to fight for this fourth position. Another good run off the corner for DeMerchant. He'll get underneath the 99 at the stripe. It will be DeBarro's spot still as they come across the start-finish line, but if DeMerchant gets a decent run out of the corner here, that might be curtains for DeBarro's run on fourth at the moment. Doesn't quite get a good run off of turn 2. It's a decent enough run to make it stick, and I don't think DeMerchant's going to be able to crawl up in front of the 99, but when they come off the corner, that might be when he finally does it.
Have to wait and see what happens. It looks like we're about to have another car come to pit road running in the 13th position. Mitch Rollo has peeled off and he's going to pit road, so another driver up inside the top 15 electing to come in and get his 4 fresh tires and fuel, and we'll have to wait and see what happens with the number 96 machine and see if this begins to draw some more guys in. We're almost 40 laps into this green flag run, and while a fuel run here is anywhere from 50 to 55 laps, when you're giving up 3 seconds a lap to the fresher tires, can you really afford to stay out that long, James? You almost have to come in at some point before you run this thing out of gas. You just can't afford to give up that kind of time.
Tires make the difference here, not fuel. Seth DeMerchant has cleared Anthony DeBarro, by the way, so there goes the 57 up into the 4th position. DeBarro back to 5th. And Dylan Jones is right there, too. Maybe a car length or two. So the man with the speed towards the tail end of this green flag run is absolutely the 57 of Seth DeMerchant. He's come right up through these cars and has gotten around all 3 of them. And it will be 4, I think, here within a lap or 2, because nobody's got the speed of Seth DeMerchant at the moment. He is flying up through this field.
On the inside of the racetrack, he's trying to make the move on Dylan Jones. He carries some good speed through the middle of the corner, but Jones is going to try to carry speed on the outside line. Gets tight off of turn 2, though, and that's going to allow for DeMerchant to try to take that position away. He's almost clear as they get to turn 3, but Jones is going to sling it in there into the corner to try to stay on the outside of Seth DeMerchant. Still trying to fight back on the outside line. They almost make contact off the corner. They do make contact off the corner. Dylan Jones hard into the wall off turn 4. That's going to bring significant damage to the 11 machine, and that will cost him at least 2 positions as he falls behind Anthony DeBarro and Daniel Eberhardt, and now heavy damage to the right side of that number 11 machine.
And the 57 and the 11, I think, were racing for the same position on the racetrack and racing for the same piece of racetrack, and they just kind of came together. They bounced off each other, and the 11, being closer to the wall, ended up being the one with the short end of the straw, as it were. Big damage to that right side of the number 11 machine.
And it appears that it has really hurt the aerodynamics on that car, because down the straightaway you can see how much speed he is losing, as David Comstock was able to close right in on the back bumper of him down the front straightaway. He was about 6 car lengths off him, and now Comstock looks to the inside and will easily be able to make the pass around the number 11 machine. So that is more than just a little bit of fender damage. That is heavy damage for that number 11 machine, and it's going to cost him several positions, as now Carl Shedd's able to get around him as well, and he is dropping like a rock after this at contact.
Would imagine with a contact and an impact that hard and that significant, that it's not just the body damage we're talking about. There's probably a little bit of suspension damage too. Probably it's knocked the toe out a little bit. Just a lot there that can happen when you're traveling at that sort of speed, because even though it's not the fastest track on the calendar, you're still looking at about 165, 170 miles an hour on corner exit there, and that's not small potatoes. That's a big impact no matter how you slice it.
Absolutely, and he just continues to fall back as now Lionel Kalisto is going to move around him. That's going to push Dylan Jones all the way back to the 9th position. And I believe we have a couple of guys now starting to fall through and come down pit road once again. I thought I saw somebody come to pit road. Have to catch up on that here in just a moment. But I was watching Sean Casto. He has unlapped himself with those fresh tires, and he is rolling right now and just continues to drive away. This thing, he while if it stays green, he won't continue as the race leader, but he should probably assume the race lead if this thing stays green all the way through. And indeed, Corey Wolf is on pit road for service as well, as he's down there. Actually, he's several laps down, so never mind. But definitely expect to see these guys coming in very soon.
Waiting here on the leaders. Not really any pits between the top 9 drivers yet. They've all stayed out so far, and that's allowed guys like Shane Ewing and Nick Silver to come up through this field a little bit just by virtue of the pit cycle and make the race for the playoffs very, very interesting, because right now Silver is out of the playoffs by 1 point behind Lionel Kalisto. It's a tiebreaker as it stands, but Kalisto with the tiebreaker would have the advantage.
And that's exactly what he needs at this point. And seeing one of our top 15 runners has a penalty through his green flag pit stops. Eric Stanford drove through too many pit boxes as he was leaving pit road, and that's going to bring him back to pit road, I believe, for a pass-through penalty, and will definitely hurt his chances here tonight, and is going to cost him a ton of track position. And I was crunching some numbers here, and I think I understand why these guys are staying out. They're almost within that window where they can make it to the end without having to come back to pit road again. They're at this point, they are at, I believe, 53 laps to go. If they can push it another 3 or 4 laps, you might be able to make it on one stop. And now Freenar's got into the wall off turn 2, it looks like, and that's going to bring David Washington and Seth the Merchant right to his back bumper as they come off turn 4.
It was not a lot of contact, but it was enough to knock the 88 side in a little bit. What sort of impact will that damage have on things? Because that's the first mistake we've seen the 88 make all race long, so nothing too crazy. It wasn't as bad as what Dylan Jones just suffered in the contact with Seth the Merchant a handful of laps ago, but it definitely was something that'll be noticeable for the 88 throughout the rest of this race. We'll just have to watch and see what kind of effect that has.
And you can see how much fresh tires mean as Mitch Rollo's rolling around on the bottom of the racetrack with fresh tires, passes all 3 of the race leaders in one corner and is able to drive away easily. So this is how much the tires mean. But those guys pitted as early as they did. They're more than likely going to have to come to pit road one more time before this thing is all said and done. And if this thing stays green, that's exactly what they did not want. Right now, having the fresher tires is really helping them, but if it goes green for a while, it's not going to matter. And now Lionel Kalisto is on pit road, James, for his green flag service. Looks like he's going to come in and finally decide it's time for 4 tires and fuel, and this could be the stop that brings everybody back in, as he was up inside the top 10 when this happened and was within reach of the race leaders. If he gets a clean stop and can get a couple of laps on them fresh tires, he could potentially get up there and take the lead away.
Depends on how much short putting will help the 97 machine and what sort of move that forces, especially from the likes of Shane Ewing and Nick Silver, who are also trying to vie for the very same playoff position in the round of 8 that Lionel Kalisto currently holds. Watching the drivers here at the front of the field, and it does look like Andrew Freenars is going to come down pit road for service, as will Seth the Merchant. One other behind them, Anthony DeBarro, will come down for service as well, and Brandon Bowie.
Oh, and Bowie might get caught for speeding as he was rolling coming into pit road there. Going to have to watch and see if the scoring officials get him for speeding. I think he's going to get away with it because he was able to get it woed down right at the line, but it's going to be close. But for everybody else down here on pit road, this is the money stop. You cannot make any mistakes coming to pit road, and it looks like Freenars gets into his box fairly cleanly, as does DeBarro, and now the pit crew has to go to work, and they have to be flawless. 4 tires and fuel for all of these drivers. They're within their range for pit stop to make it to the end, and now who's going to win the race off under this green flag pit stop? It looks like Freenars will, but Seth the Merchant's right there. They almost come off side by side, but it looks like Freenars is going to hang on, and now Seth the Merchant's trying to pass him on the apron here. We got some racing going on the apron. Seth the Merchant's going to make that move, and James, that could be a move that wins him the race if he's able to hold on to this thing.
Meanwhile, you've got the leaders from the next lap on pit road, and it was very, very close, both for Daniel Eberhardt and David Comstock. I think they got slowed up enough in time, but they were nearly sideways trying to scrub off speed as they came down to make their pit stop on the green flag run. Looks like everybody will get away clean, though. Washington will be all right, as will Eberhardt, as will Comstock, and now it'll fall, I think, on the number 9 of Trevor Rapolo to come down pit road for service next.
And when does he make that move? He's the race leader right now as Lionel Kalisto is trying to go around him to take that, or just to get his lap back at the moment. He's ahead of Seth DeMerchant as well. Lionel Kalisto, as of right now, could be scored as the race leader if he was able to hang on, but Seth DeMerchant and Andrew Freenars are right there behind him trying to catch him and trying to take that position away. But you can see just how much that extra lap on the fresh tires was able to make up for Lionel Kalisto, as he's now ahead of several guys that he was behind before this. Could be a big call for the number 97 machine if he can hang on, and possibly if he can lead a lap, James, he'd get a bonus point. That helps his situation in making it into the next round, because he'd be able to gain a point on Nick Silver that he doesn't have right now. So he's definitely needing to fight for this until the round of pit stops is over.
Rapolo now has finally made it to the apron. He struggled to get down there with everybody on fresh tires coming behind him, but the number 9 machine is in for service, and that puts Dylan Jones in the race lead, followed by the 46 of Sean Casto.
And when do these guys elect to come to pit road? That's the big question now. Dylan Jones, he's just hanging out there hoping for a caution, I have to believe. And actually, he's on pit road now. He's finally deciding to come in. I think he was trying to stay out in hopes of getting a caution so he could work on this car and try to get some damage. But now he's in, and he's going to have to get some tires. I don't think he's going to have time to really work on that car, but you're going to get tires and fuel and get back out there. And now the race is on for what would be the lead here in just a moment, as Lionel Kalisto is trying to hang on and keep Seth DeMerchant and Andrew Freenars at bay. He's working around Christopher Hurlow, who also has not been to pit road yet, and he's going to try to take that position away. He slides up and almost puts the 87 in the wall, but he's able to hang on, and now he's just got to hope he can hold on long enough to lead a lap. But here comes Seth DeMerchant to the inside, and this could be the moment that he did not want to see, as it looks like DeMerchant is easily going to take that position away, but it looks like Kalisto is going to try to fight back on the outside, just can't quite get there.
Can't quite make it happen, excuse me, as see a big old pack of cars there just trying to fight their way through and figure this all out. Meanwhile, though, interestingly enough, I think Sean Casto with the short pit did take the race lead and all of that. And then you've got Mitch Rollo and Gabe Wood sitting in the second and third positions.
And how long do these guys stay out? The longer they stay out, the fresher their tires are going to be at the end of this run. But how long do you stay out before it's too long? Because at this point, they could potentially lose a lap by the time they do come to pit road and decide that they want to get tires and fuel here. I just have to wait and see what happens. But looks like Seth DeMerchant is going to hang on and try to lead this thing once they do finally come to pit road.
When they do, that'll be an interesting thing to note, but for the moment, it's time to take a look at tonight's iRacing Midway Race Break, which is brought to you by iRacing, the leading online racing simulation. Developed from the beginning as a centralized racing and competition service, iRacing organizes, hosts, and officiates races on virtual tracks all around the world. In the fast-paced world of esports, iRacing is a one-stop shop for online racing, with officially sanctioned racing from NASCAR, IndyCar, IMSA, the World of Outlaws, the Cars Tour, USAC, Blancpain GT, VLN, and coming later this fall, Red Bull Global Rallycross. So we mentioned Sean Casto, Mitch Rollo, Gabe Wood, 1, 2, 3 at the moment, then Seth DeMerchant in the 4th position. Lionel Kalisto runs in the 5th spot, then Andrew Freenar sits in 6th. Chris Hurlow currently holds the 7th position. David Washington holds the 8th spot. 9th belongs to Brandon Bowie, and 10th is where you'll find Daniel Eberhardt.
Anthony DeBarro is back in the 11th position right now. Then you have David Comstock sitting back in the 12th position. John Abbott having a great night so far. He's in 13th. Then we have Carl Shedd in 14th. One of our playoff contenders, Nick Silver, is in the 15th position right now. Then we have Ross Cato in 16th. Austin Coop is sitting in 17th. Then we have Tanner Tallarico in 18th. And another one of our playoff contenders. And the last guy on the lead lap right now, Shane Ewing, is 19th. And then Dwayne Vincent, who is in a must-win situation. He currently sits one lap down in 20th. That's not going to get the job done for the number 13 machine.
Dylan Jones now really hurting after the contact with Wall. Currently runs 21st, 1 lap down. 22nd is where you'll find the 22 of Bruce Pearson. Eric Stanford got a pit penalty. He sits 23rd, 1 lap down, as does Trevor Roppolo, who will actually be 2 laps down in the 24th spot. Dakota Bowman runs in 25th at the moment. Nelson Rivera crashed out early. He has scored 26th. 27th is Corey Wolf at the moment. Chris Murdoch had issues getting to the grid and is running 56 laps down in 28th, but still on track. Douglas Wyatt in 29th at the moment, 74 laps down. And that will conclude tonight's iRacing Midway Race Break. For more information on the wide variety of sim racing possibilities online, visit iRacing.com to sign up today. For a limited time, you can visit iRacing.com/World of Outlaws and take advantage of exclusive promo codes to get yourself on the sim with a 1-year membership for half the price. Once again, that's iRacing.com/World of Outlaws. And from our midway race break, we'll move right to this battle here between Lionel Callisto and Andrew Farinars. And it's taking some time for Callisto to get up towards the top 5, but now that he's got fresh tires here, he's trying to fight off the 88 machine and hang on to a spot in the round of 8.
And while he fights off Andrew Freenars, it looks like Gabe Wood finally elected to come to pit road. He's on pit road for his service, but this battle continues to fight on as Callisto is trying to hang on to that position. That would be second once everything cycles through, but it looks like he's going to have to give up that position to Andrew Freenars, and he will indeed. Freenars is going to be able to take that position away, and now he has to set his sights on that number 57 machine of Seth DeMerchant, and here comes David Washington right behind them as well, and he's trying to make something happen. That would take that position away and would slot Lionel Callisto back. For the moment would actually be in 6th, but when everything cycles through, he'd be in 4th, and David Washington will indeed make that move and take that position away as he fights back on the outside, though Lionel Callisto not giving up without a fight, but Washington's going to win the battle.
So Washington clears to move Washington to the 5th position. Watching that gap here now between Callisto and Nick Silver for the final position in the playoffs as it stands. Silver runs in 14th, Callisto in 5th. Silver, if Callisto holds this position, or 6th rather, would have to finish in 9th or better to secure a place in the round of 8. That's a little bit closer to him than it's been for the majority of the night, but still a little bit more speed needs to come from Silver, who now jumps up another position to 13th. So it's getting close now. It might get really, really close down to the end of this.
It's going to be interesting to see what happens. The problem now for Nick Silver is he's got a pretty good gap to start picking off more cars. He's got about 2 full seconds to get to Carl Shedd, and he's got about 7 seconds to get to David Comstock and Anthony DeBarro. With less than 35 laps to go, you've got to believe he's starting to run out of time. That's not a gap that he can't run down, but it's not going to be easy for him if he's going to be able to have an opportunity to go get these guys and see if he can't steal this thing away from him. And how about Lionel Callisto, though? He's hanging on really well right now in that 6th position, doing everything he needs to do. And Brandon Bowie all of a sudden has showed up inside the top 10 as well. He's in 7th.
Really good battle, though, side by side here in the 10th spot. Anthony DeBarro, David Comstock running side by side, trying to sort out that. And that's been a battle, I think, that's gone on this entire race. Those two have been glued together, it seems like, for all of the 92 laps that we completed so far. DeBarro now coming back on the outside, but he got the wall, clipped the wall just a little bit, I think, with the right rear of his car more than anything else. So that'll give Comstock the position, move David Comstock back up into the top 10.
And Comstock now sets his sights on the 87 of Chris Hurlow. Can he get there as they go to turn 1? He's a little bit too far away to make a move on him right now, but he's definitely closing in on him in a hurry, and it looks like he's going to be able to make that move as they go through 1 and 2. Is he going to be able to make the move to the inside of the racetrack? That looks like what he's going to try to do as they come off turn 2. He looks low, not quite close enough to do anything with him yet, but he's going to make that move now as they go to turn 3, goes to the inside line, and it looks like Hurlow is going to just let him go. That's going to move David Comstock up into the 9th position now as he tries to get away from that number 99 machine.
Hurlow with a really, really easy run there into, I guess, the clutches of Anthony DeBarro, because Comstock has just jetted away. About 6, 7, 8 car lengths there just off that straightaway, which was the last thing that DeBarro wanted to see.
We have a battle shaping up for what would be the lead here shortly as Seth DeMerchant, David Washington going at it for that third and fourth position right now. They're about 4.5 seconds behind Sean Casto and Mitch Rollo, but both, I believe, are going to have to come back to pit road one more time before this thing is all said and done. And it looks like Washington now is trying to do everything he can to try to chase down Seth DeMerchant. And now they've got the lap car of Dylan Jones right up here in front of them. Are they going to be able to get by cleanly is the big question. As Seth DeMerchant is going to have to try to navigate that. He goes to the inside, and it looks like he's going to be able to get around the 11 cleanly and is going to try to hang on to that position over the number 98 machine as Washington goes to the bottom of the racetrack. He's trying to make that inside line work, but just can't quite get there as they come off turn 4.
Oh, it was close for him to slide up behind the 57 machine, but he did sneak in behind Seth DeMerchant, but the pressure's definitely there. Currently a battle for the third position, but Mitch Rollo's not too far up the road from this, and the same can be said about Sean Casto. Both of those drivers decided to short pit, so they've got older tires. Their cars aren't as fast. This should be one that Seth DeMerchant and David Washington run down, so it's not for the race lead yet, but it should be here as we close in on the 25 lap to go point of this race.
Yeah, Seth DeMerchant and David Washington are running almost a full second quicker than these guys every single lap, about 0.7 of a second that time by. Cut the gap down from 2.6 to 1.9 from the back bumper of Sean Casto. So definitely going to be able to challenge those guys and take those positions away pretty quickly. But now the battle is on between these two. And James, you have to wonder if that move that Seth DeMerchant made coming off of pit road during green flag pit stops, if that's not going to end up being the move of the race. He was able to get to the inside of Andrew Freenar on the apron and go around him and be able to take that position away while they were coming off of pit road. And since then, he's been able to hang on. And if he can hold off this number 98 machine, that could be the move that wins him the race.
I think the key to the 57's success tonight is that he's had speed in the middle of the track on corner exit. Most everybody else has been pinned up right along that outside retaining wall and just hasn't been able to make anything else work on this racetrack. But the 57 machine has consistently gone down to the bottom and found speed without burning his tires off. And that's made him a bit of a black sheep within this field. Nobody else has really been able to do that, and it's given him basically a free pass to get around a lot of these drivers because they can't run the same line he's been running. Otherwise, they'll just slow themselves down. So they do what's best for them. He does what's best for him, and it just works out in his favor that he doesn't really get much resistance when he's racing anybody because it's absolutely in most of the people's best interest who are running this race to stay up top.
And while that was going on, Seth DeMerchant made the move around both Sean Casto and Mitch Rollo, and that officially moves the 57 into the race lead. And so now this battle between David Washington and Seth DeMerchant is for the lead and potentially for the race victory. For David Washington, he's already got a win in this round. He doesn't have to worry about it. He's moving on to the round of 8. For Seth DeMerchant, he's not even in the playoffs. He just wants to come in here and play spoiler, see if he can't steal a victory, and just be up here saying, hey guys, I got some speed. You better look out for me next year in 2018 because I could be a threat next year as well. So that's exactly what we're seeing this 57 machine try to do here as we're inside the final 25 laps of this race. I think we're at 23 laps to go now, and Seth DeMerchant just needs 23 flawless laps to get his first victory of the season.
And change. I think we'll be coming to that here next time by, but DeMerchant with a lot of speed. David Washington's going to have to find a way to run him down and figure out something. Definitely not impossible for the 6-time winner in 2017, Mr. Washington, but I don't know if he's had a challenge this stout at the front of the field in a race like this, though. Usually it's Washington that's laying the beat down on everybody at a 1.5 mile track, not somebody else.
Well, and this is a welcome sight, I believe, though, because it really brings on a challenge that he has not had, like you mentioned. And Seth DeMerchant has only made 3 starts prior to tonight. Tonight is his 4th race in the 2017 campaign. His other 3 races were at Dover, New Hampshire, and Chicagoland. He has a pair of top 10s at New Hampshire and Chicago, and then a 16th at Dover, but showing a lot of speed here tonight. And you have to believe it's going to be a statement if he can hang on to do this thing, though. But he's got a few more laps to go, and it looks like David Washington's starting to close that gap back in as he's down inside of a car length off the back bumper of the number 57 machine as they come off turn 2.
And I think something else we need to note here is that Brandon Bowie has now started coming through this field and is currently in the 6th position. And I believe, if my math is correct, He's 1 point behind of Lionel Kalisto, so anything 2 spots above Kalisto or greater would be enough to leapfrog Kalisto and get into the round of 8 over the 97 machine. And Bowie now up to the 5th position here when it matters most. That's now 3 spots above Kalisto. So now I believe it's Brandon Bowie who is in the last spot in the round of 8 as it stands. Still have about 20 laps to go, but Bowie now running in a position to advance after it's been Kalisto that's been there for a good 3/4 of this race.
It's going to be very interesting to see what happens, as it's pretty clear that Nick Silver is not having the race that he was looking for here tonight, running pretty rough right now, as is Trevor Roppolo, running back in the 23rd position. Them having some issues could mean both of these drivers are able to make it in. Going to have to do some math here and see. Trevor Roppolo had a decent gap over Lionel Kalisto, had 12 points over Kalisto coming into tonight, and right now where he's running is not going to hold it on, as he is more than 12 positions behind him on the racetrack. So this could be a big moment for both of these drivers.
Very, very big, tense moments indeed for both of them, because now they're tied on points as it stands. Bowie just the one ahead of Kalisto now that Mitch Rollo and Sean Casto have come down pit road after the short pit didn't work out. So it would go to a tiebreaker at this point if the checkered flag fell right now. That is how close a margin we are looking at here between the 44 and the 97.
And in the event of a tiebreaker, Kalisto would also win this battle, because if you look back to Talladega, Brandon Bowie finished 17th, Lionel Kalisto finished 6th, and then if you go to Charlotte, it looks like Lionel Kalisto finished 12th, where Brandon Bowie finished 10th. So right now, actually, as they're running, Brandon Bowie would get the tiebreaker because he's running in 5th, but the problem is now he's only 1 position behind him on the racetrack. Lionel Kalisto is, that is, and that would not be enough for Bowie to be able to move ahead of him. So Brandon Bowie either needs Kalisto to lose a few positions, or he needs to find a way to get up there and get around Freenars and Eberhardt and possibly even David Washington in order to move on ahead of him.
So 1 second then is the next big marker we need to watch out for, but we also have to pay attention to the man who may just have become Brandon Bowie's best friend. David Comstock just cleared Lionel Kalisto to go to the 6th position. So Kalisto now 2 spots back, and now Bowie once again in the final position in the round of 8 to advance.
I'm just crunching some numbers here, James, and I believe both of these drivers right now are safely into the next round, into the round of 8 as they run, because with Trevor Roppolo sitting back outside of the top 20, he's back in 22nd. He's already fallen out as it runs right now, and Nick Silver sitting back in the 15th position, he would also fall out. I'm pretty sure that both Lionel Kalisto and Brandon Bowie are safely into the round of 8 as it runs right now. If they can finish this thing out where they're running, they would both advance, as they are both ahead of by Nick Silver and Trevor Roppolo by more than enough positions in order to move on.
12 spots, I think, is the difference, if we've got the math correct, from Roppolo to Kalisto, 13 to Bowie. Bowie is currently ahead of Roppolo by 17, Kalisto by, I believe, 15. So you're right. It would be a very, very easy drive for both Brandon Bowie and Lionel Kalisto into the round of 8, and Roppolo, who won the race at Daytona to kick off the year, hasn't won a race since and may well see his playoff chances end here tonight.
And in the event of a tiebreaker between these two, once again, Lionel Kalisto would actually get the tiebreaker with his 6th place finish. So Lionel Kalisto, he's got the tiebreakers covered. He just doesn't want to have to worry about it even coming to that. He wants to point his way in and be ahead of all of these drivers. If he can hang on and not lose 2 more positions between now and the end of the race, he would indeed do that without even having to worry about the points he would be in. So he's got to be mindful of that and try to hang on. The good news for the number 97 machine, he's got over 2 seconds back to Anthony DeBarro, and over almost 4 seconds back to Mitch Rollo and Carl Shedd as well. So he's in a pretty good spot here, unless we get a caution, which we haven't seen since, I believe, lap 26 or so. He's in a pretty good place to make sure that he's going to move on to the next round, as is Brandon Bowie. They're both stepping up to the occasion and doing exactly what they need to do to move on to the next round.
Get themselves in and give themselves a fighting chance at Martinsville, Texas, and Phoenix. Meanwhile, DeMerchant still holding by about 3 or 4 car lengths ahead of David Washington. He's been in that position just about all run long since they came back off of pit road that last time by. As we get down to it as well, looks like, if my math is correct, we have 12 laps to go before the end of this race. Seth DeMerchant now really just, I don't know if it's hanging on, I don't know if it's cruising, I don't know if he's pushing the daylights out of it, but he's still got the lead and he's been able to hold it there. So if anything, he and Washington may well have equal cars at this stage.
It certainly looks like that, as the gap has pretty much stayed the same over the last 10 laps or so. Washington's able to stay right there, but just can't really close the gap. He's able to close by about a half a tenth that time by, but they were also working around some lap traffic, so just trying to hang on for Seth DeMerchant and just see if he can't do this. But he's got the advantage of the outside line, and like you mentioned a few minutes ago, James, he's able to move that car around. He doesn't have to stay pinned up against the wall. He can move down and run the middle groove, he can run the low groove, or he can run the top groove. When you have a car that's that versatile, you really don't have anything to worry about. As long as you don't make any mistakes, you're in a pretty good spot. So when David Washington gets to him, he can change his line to try to do something different to see if he can't hold him off. And inside 10 laps to go, that's exactly what I expect that 57 to do in order to get his first win of the season.
And if you're Washington, how hard do you push and how hard do you want the extra points that would come with the victory? Or are you safe in the knowledge that you've made it through to the round of 8 already and you just kind of ride these last few laps out to make sure that you don't cause any problems? Looking back through this field, Daniel Eberhardt's in a decent position and Andrew Frenars is okay. And then you've got Brandon Bowie and David Comstock and Lionel Kalisto all kind of sitting in a bunch, although Kalisto is a little bit further back of all these guys, but a little bit of a mix of lap traffic and lead lap traffic in there. You've got Bowie right there, Comstock there, and then a few lap cars. Eric Stanford, Trevor Roppolo, and then the 22 of Bruce Pearson all kind of in a row there.
And just trying to get this thing to the end of the race. And how about Lionel Kalisto and Brandon Bowie? I am so impressed with the performance we've seen out of both of these drivers here tonight. They came into this race on the outside looking in. They knew, and we have a caution here that's going to change everything with 7 laps to go. Our second caution of the race, and it looks like that is the number 87 of Chris Hurlow. Around going off into turn 3. Not sure what happened. Looks like it all started coming off of turn 2. He got into the wall, got loose, and then just wasn't able to hang onto it and spins it out. So hold everything, because we're going to have one final restart that could be the difference in this playoff round.
Catch your breath now. Hang on to everything, because this is going to be absolutely crazy. I don't think there's any other way to put it. The question is, do you come down pit road for tires? Should be somewhere in the neighborhood of 2 or 3 laps once we get the restart to finish this off. Do you think it's worth it, or do you need the track position?
Oh man, I would hate to be in this situation right now if I'm the driver or if I'm the crew chief. I don't want to make this decision, because either way it could end up being the wrong decision. And for guys like Brandon Bowie, like Lionel Kalisto, even the guys in the back, Nick Silver, that are trying to fight their way, and Shane Ewing, a bad decision here could be the difference between you moving on and you sitting out as you watch the other guys race for a championship. We're about to find out, though. Looks like Seth DeMerchant has decided he's coming to pit road, and it looks like everybody else inside the top 5 will come in. Does anybody take a chance? I don't believe so. Everybody's coming in, and we'll go for tires. Now the question is, do you do 2 or do you do 4? We're going to have to wait and see what these guys decide to do.
So back to the front of all of this to see how this shakes out. Interesting keys here. DeMerchant will come in and lead them. Is it 2 or is it 4 on the number 57 machine? Right sides go up on that car. Left sides will go up as well. So he'll do 4. Will anybody else try for anything? Not that I'm seeing. So I think DeMerchant will be okay.
And it looks like Daniel Eberhardt's going to beat David Washington out of the pits. Or actually, no, David Washington, I believe he did take 2 tires, as he's way ahead of all of these guys. And indeed, the number 98, James, he elected to take 2 tires. And I like this call. You've already got a win. You know you're in the round of 8. Why not take a chance and see if you can't get another victory on the season? This is, if I'm in their shoes, this is the one place that I would be okay with being if I was the driver or the crew chief, because you can take this chance, and it doesn't really matter what happens for your season.
And oh, by the way, guess who stayed out in all of this? The 96 machine of Mitch Rollo. So, we saw pretty much straightforward stuff, I think, for everybody, as we see Rollo get the wave around to get cleaned up. But it will be Washington, I think. And we'll look and see, and we'll just let it sort of cycle out and figure out how it goes.
And it looks like Anthony DeBarro will be scored as the race leader, as he elected to not come to pit road at all. So he's going to be on those really old tires, and more than likely he's in a bad spot here. But if he can catch a quick caution going off into turn one, he could steal one here and possibly go after it and get his first win of the season. And this is a driver that, much like David Washington, doesn't really have anything to lose. He's not in the playoffs, and he doesn't have a chance to race for the championship. Why not stay out, take a chance? You haven't had the best of season anyway, so if it doesn't work out, it really doesn't change much on your season, but you could get lucky here. If you can catch a quick caution, you might be able to get your first win of the year. It's going to be very interesting to see, and I'm trying to look and see how Lionel Kalisto fares right now. I believe he would still be safely in, but now he's got to be a little concerned because Nick Silver is close to him. If he loses some positions on this restart, it could get a little hairy, and it could possibly make him fall out of this round of 8 if they have any issues on this next restart.
It's really, really tight. It's the 4-point gap that they had coming into this race exactly. So Kalisto would make it, I think, on the tiebreaker if my math is correct. So we'll get ready for that. But in the meantime, while we have a moment, we'll remind you that coverage of the RealSimRacing.com Full Throttle Cup Series is brought to you by Joel Real Timing, the official timing software of LSRTV. Whether you spend your time on the sim, behind the wheel, on the pit box, or from the spotter stand, JRT is the go-to software for iRacing timing and scoring analytics. You can get yourself a basic download for free or get the pro version today at joel-real-timing.com. That's joel-real-timing.com. So, do you like 3-lap restarts? Because that's what we'll have for you. Anthony DeBarro stayed out. David Washington took 2 tires. Seth DeMerchant restarts third, has led a good chunk of the back half of this race, and it looks like everybody else behind him took 4 tires. So that'll be Daniel Everhart, Andrew Freenars, David Comstock, Brandon Bowie, Shane Ewing, Ross Cato, Lionel Kalisto in your top 10, and Nick Silver now runs in the 13th position. So going to be tight. He would be clear, I think, by 1 spot of Kalisto to make it into the round of 8. So Kalisto's got to get up on the wheel and go. Restart coming here. DeBarro gets away. Decent jump, but not a great one here. And the 98 kind of stacked everybody up. But DeMerchant now going straight to the bottom underneath DeBarro to try and get the race lead as they go 3 wide into turn 1.
Seth DeMerchant on the bottom of the racetrack. DeBarro slides up into the 98, makes contact. David Washington almost wrecks it, but somehow hangs on. And here they go down the back straightaway. Kalisto tries to squeeze by. He's able to get by the 99 and the 98, and now looks to the inside of Brandon Bowie. This is the race for the playoff spot as they come to 2 to go here at Kansas.
Here comes Seth DeMerchant out in front of this field, but that battle for the playoffs might be the biggest thing. I have absolutely no idea where anybody sits. Kalisto up to 6, Silver to 11. So Kalisto would be clear, and I think Bowie would be too.
Right now, the biggest thing is that Nick Silver cannot get around one.
David Comstock goes around. Comstock contact between him, and I couldn't tell who the other car was. It was the 90 of Daniel Everhart. Just, I think, came I'm putting to him and got the rear end of him, but that brings out the yellow flag, and that, I think, should do it and give Seth DeMerchant the race victory.
It will give him the race victory, and looking back at the playoff situation right now, Lionel Kalisto is exactly 4 positions ahead of Nick Silver on the racetrack, which means they would tie, and in the event of a tiebreaker, Lionel Kalisto now would have a 5th place finish that would win him that tiebreaker and move him on into the round of 8. Unofficial right now, I don't want to guarantee that my math is correct, but with a 4-point differential between them, he's 4 positions ahead on the racetrack, and I believe the number 97 is moving on into the next round.
We will wait for the official word from timing and scoring to make sure that we know who the last man in the round of 8 is. We know Brandon Bowie should be fine, but as it stands, Seth DeMerchant is going to come across the start-finish line and win his first RealSimRacing.com Full Throttle Cup Series race of 2017. DeMerchant takes the checkered flag at Kansas.
And how about that race for Seth DeMerchant? Did everything that he needed to do, had a fast car on the short run, fast car on the long run, and looks like he's got a lot of speed in that car, and he's going to get his first victory of the season in just his fourth start in the 2017 campaign. A heck of a drive for the number 57 machine.
And how about this? If you like battles, we have one for you. Because right now, we have a perfectly square three-way tie for 8th in the points between Brandon Bowie, Lionel Callisto, and Nick Silver. So, we will wait for race officials to give us the answer to see who goes through as you take a look at what happened with David Comstock and Daniel Eberhardt one last time. But my goodness. Oh, I don't want to be sitting in the scoring tower right now because that just sounds like a headache to have to work out.
Well, I believe both Brandon Bowie and Lionel Callisto would get in based on their finishes because they'll both move ahead of Trevor Roppolo. He's too far out because he finished back in, I believe, the 24th position, actually 23rd. But either way, he's more than 12 and more than 13 positions behind both of them. And then with the tiebreaker on Nick Silver, you've got Brandon Bowie, who finished up in that 3rd position. That's going to be enough to get him the tiebreaker. And Lionel Callisto finishing in 4th. So I believe you're going to see both of those drivers move on to the next round.
Well, we'll take a moment here and take our first and I suppose only commercial break of the evening to have everything sorted out for us up in the scoring tower. And we'll also talk to your top 3 finishers and give you your full field rundown on the other side of the break. You're watching coverage of the RealSimRacing.com Full Throttle Cup Series presented by Gary Mercer Trucking on LSRTV, your home for sim racing.
When I was 16 years old, I was working in a Goodyear tire store, and my boss actually built an old dirt car, street stock Monte Carlo. Went with him one night, fell in love with it. It was a hell of a race, hell of a party, and a big fight afterwards. I was like, this is it. This is it for me. It wasn't long after that, I was driving an old 78 Camaro out of the weeds at that guy's farm. We pulled that thing out and made a race car out of it, and away we went. You know, I think a driver has more to do with the equation going back and racing dirt, whether it's a modified, a late model. You can do more with the race car. You know, the harder you drive it, a lot of times, the better it goes. You can crawl up on that wheel and feel like you made the difference at the end of the night. Asphalt car, you can't overdrive them. Well, that was the first thing that I had to learn right off the bat is, oh my gosh, I've got to discipline myself, not overdrive this thing, and that's how you get the most out of it. Truth be told, communicating the right information to your crew and your crew chief so they can do their job and make their appropriate adjustments for you to go faster and do your job is probably 90% of the game in our world. I've always loved late models. You know, my dream was to be a late model driver driving for a living across the country like Daryl and Don do that drive for me. I mean, that was, truth be told, that was my dream, you know. I always wanted a semi. I always wanted a stacker trailer with 2 hot rods in it and let's go racing. Let's take off with your buddies and go race and chase that dream. Never in a million years did I think it would turn into a Cup Series, and I actually have an opportunity to own 2 dirt late model teams. When you think of iRacing, you don't think of a video game. It's not. It's way above and beyond any of that. You know, dirt racing changes so much. The track changes so much. Being able to capture that, to experience all those details that surround dirt racing and make dirt racing what it is what makes iRacing so cool, because they did nail all of that. I knew when they came to our shop and scanned cars and went to the detail of getting that car right, I knew that it was going to be over the top, because it blew my mind just the work that went into making sure the car itself was legit. This sport has been around a long time. The competition can't be replaced, and that's what brings people back to the racetrack week in and week out.
Welcome back to LSRTV's coverage of the RealSimRacing.com Full Throttle Cup Series, presented by Gary Mercer Trucking. where we've wrapped up race 32 of the season from Kansas Speedway, and Seth DeMerchant goes to victory lane for the first time in this series in 2017. And now that we've completed tonight's race, it's time to go through our full field rundown and tell you where your favorite driver finished. DeMerchant gets his first win of 2017. Andrew Freenars will move on into the round of 8 with that run in second place. Brandon Bowie and Lionel Callisto are part of a very, very messy three-way tie for the last playoff spot, which our officials are still working out, so we'll get you more information on that as we pass it along to you, or as we have it passed along to us. But we can tell you that they did finish 3rd and 4th in this race. Tanner Tallarico comes home with the top 5. That's one of his, maybe his best finish of the season. David Washington won last week to move on to the round of 8, comes home with a 6th place finish this evening. Shane Ewing finishes 7th, and I believe will be out of the playoffs at this point. So Ewing done here at the round of 12 stage. The same may be said for Nick Silver, but he's the other man involved in that gigantic 3-way playoff fiasco. So again, once scoring comes through to us, we'll let you know and tell you who's advanced to the round of 8. Ross Gato finishes 9th in this event, and Gabe Wood rounds out your top 10.
Sitting in the 11th position, another one of the playoff contenders, and I believe he's going to make it through cleanly. Carl Shedd will finish in the 11th position. Then we have Austin Coop coming home in 12th, and then Dwayne Vincent needed to win here tonight. He was not able to get the job done. He's going to come home 13th and will not advance into the round of 8. David Comstock ran up inside the top 10 for much of the race, but got caught up in a wreck with Daniel Eberhardt right at the very end. He comes home in 14th. Then we have Anthony DeBarro, who finishes 15th. He stayed out on old tires, hoping that he could catch a quick caution, wasn't able to get it, and will finish in the 15th position. Chris Hurlow will finish 16th, and then Daniel Eberhardt will finish 17th, and then Sean Callisto comes home in the 18th position. He is going to be the last driver to finish on the lead lap here tonight. Mitch Rollo will come home 19th, 1 lap down, and then Bruce Pearson will come home 20th. He finishes 2 laps down here tonight.
And moving on for the likes of Sean Casto in 18th and company, Eric Stanford finishes in 21st tonight. John Abbott was 22nd this evening. Trevor Roppolo won the Daytona race and is another eliminatee from the round of 12. He is done in the playoffs for 2017 after a 23rd place finish. Dylan Jones won last week, so he'll be in the round of 8, but got into it with Seth DeMerchant, made a little bit of contact, and just never had the same car from there on out. Finishes 5 laps down in 24th. 25th is where you found Dakota Bowman on the pylon tonight. Nelson Rivera wrecked out early, finishes 26th. Corey Wolf finishes 27th. Chris Murdoch 28th, and Douglas Wyatt finishes 29th in this race, the 32nd of 36 in the 2017 season. And that is your full field rundown for tonight's race at Kansas Speedway. And we can now turn to Victory Lane, where it's Seth DeMerchant's time to shine. And we have a non-playoff winner, I think, for the first time in these 2017 playoffs. But from a genuinely fast driver and race car, and we know he's had a lot of success in a lot of the other series that you see on the sim, and now gets himself a win here in the Full Throttle Cup Series. So, Seth, you haven't run the full season. I think we can just open it up by talking about what it's like here to race on Monday nights in the RSR Full Throttle Cup Series and sort of level of competition that you saw here while you were racing in Kansas tonight.
It's very high. It's like running a top split NIS race, but a lot cleaner. We actually get green flag laps in. It's a lot of fun.
The most intriguing thing, I think, to all of us was that you were able to make the middle of this racetrack work like nobody else in the field. So I take it that was something that you probably practiced a good bit, but did you have some sort of sense of that being what you wanted to do coming into this, knowing that this is a place where most people like to run the top side?
Yeah, from running some practice this week before the race, doing some B-opens and stuff and official, I found that hooking the seam would really help save the right front tire and put more load on the right rear, and especially in this setup where it was really tight tonight, it would help a lot because the right front would just die if you would go hard like some of these guys were. So I felt like that helped me a lot.
And then the pit strategy and everything that kind of shaked out really, really weirdly. Were you at any point unsettled by any of that? Or did you know that you had the sort of speed and you just figured even if you got a yellow flag that you could find a way back up through the field like you did to start this race?
As soon as I got up to Andrew in Washington, I was struggling to pass him, and then Andrew pitted. And I knew if I didn't do something, he was probably going to get out to like a pretty big lead if I was going to run out of gas, because we could have gone like 5 more laps or so. So I knew that I decided to pit with him and try to beat him out, and I raced him down on the apron out of pit road, and that's how I ended up getting the lead. And then I just held on from there.
And then that final restart, it didn't seem like much once you got underneath Anthony DeBarra, but just talk about getting the jump there, coming back to the green flag to go seal off the victory. Yeah,
I knew there that the leader on no tires at all, and then Washington only being on 2, that I thought the bottom was going to easily be able to outpower them, even with the progressive banking and the top being faster. And if I could get out in front of them and get back up on the top, I pretty much had it.
Now, there are a lot of people that make it happen for you and this 57 machine, so here's your chance to send your shout-outs, your love, your thank yous to everybody that makes it happen. Who do you need to thank for tonight's victory, Seth?
Just all the guys at Six Man and P-Money Designs for painting the cars, and Peterson Irrigation for being on the car today.
Many thanks for the time, Seth, and we know our super late model champion of the Cars Esports Tour, Christian Peterson, will be pretty happy, I think, about seeing his name up on top of the pylon here tonight. So big congrats to you and everybody at Six Man, and hopefully we'll see you back here not too long from now.
Thank you.
So Seth the Merchant comes home P1 tonight, and from there we move now to P2 and slide to the 88 of Andrew Freenars, who is standing by with our Brian Macklin.
Indeed I am, Andrew. You were fastest in practice. You qualified on the pole. You led the most laps here tonight, but you came up just a little short. Take us through your night and what ended up getting you with the second place finish.
Yeah, did a lot of practicing this week. Kind of expected to be fast qualifying. I think Dave might have a better lap, Dave Washington, but he said he just messed up 3 and 4 a little. We were lucky to start in the pole. That definitely helped pit selection and kind of getting on and off pit road. We were really point racing today. We wanted to lead that halfway mark to get that extra bonus point, and we were able to do that. From there, we really had a green flag stop there. I could have got off the pit road a little better. I think that was really the race there, and it was just so hard to pass out there. We may have pitted 2-3 laps earlier, and that really showed later in the run. I think the only reason we got second is because that late race restart, and we were able to pass some cars luckily there. Other than that, I think we were probably a 3rd, 4th place car, but came out with a second. Can't complain with that. On to the next round.
And you brought it up, and I was going to ask you about it. That race off of pit road between you and Seth the Merchant, did you see that coming, him going to the inside of you like that, or was that something that you just weren't prepared for when he made that move?
I was ready for it. I think in all the practices I did this week, it's pretty loose down there. You got to be easy getting back on the gas. I was more comfortable running that right near the white line, and the last thing I wanted to do was spin it coming off of pit road and sacrifice a place in the top 8 in the chase. So, you know, maybe I could have went a little harder off of there, but we were point racing at that point. You know, we'd love to get a win, but to make the top 8's even better than a win.
Well, and we can confirm with your second place finish that you did indeed move on to the round of 8. And looking ahead, you have 3 completely different styles of racetracks with Martinsville next week. Then you go to Texas, and then you'll complete that round of 8 at Phoenix. If you had to pick one of those 3 tracks to possibly get you a win and guarantee you a spot into the Final Four at Homestead, which track would it be, and how aggressive are you going to have to be in order to get it done?
I think I'd have to pick Phoenix. Statistically, on iRacing, that's actually my best track. It's just small. It runs like a short track, and I just something about it that I just love. We're really playing with house money at this point. You know, we made the top 8. I think that was our expectation going into the chase. But realistically, the way the bonus points works out, we're going to have to win with these next 3. So look for us making some 2-tire stops or maybe staying out longer, pitting earlier, or something to try to steal a win. But we're really going to enjoy being in the top 8 tonight, and you know, we'll see if we can't steal one of these next 3 races.
All right, well, congrats on your second place run here tonight. Good luck in the next round. Before we let you go, though, just want to give you a chance to say thank you to your sponsors and say hi to any friends or family that might be watching. Who makes it happen for you on the number 88 machine, Andrew?
Yeah, I have to say thanks to you guys, LSRTV, putting the league on, putting a great show on for the fans. I hope everyone watched it, enjoyed it. I know there wasn't much passing, but I think that late race restart really made it interesting. I got to say thanks to my brother for building the computer to run the sim. It ain't possible without him. All my friends and family, my dad, my mom, my grandpa. Sean actually made T-shirts for us, so big shout out to him. Steve on top of the box, Dave, Dylan, Daniel, Andy puts the paint schemes on every week, Ross, Carl, just everybody on this Aegis Power Tech team.
Well, congrats on your second place run. Once again, good luck in the next round of the playoffs, and we look forward to hopefully talking to you next week at Martinsville, Andrew.
Yep, thanks so much. Look forward to it.
He finished second here tonight. He advances into the round of 8. He has an opportunity to race for a championship at Homestead if he can get the job done in the next 3 races, and he's going to try to move on. That's Andrew Freenars, your second place finisher here tonight. Now, James, I believe you caught up with another driver who is in the middle of some controversy. We don't know who's in the next round as far as this driver's concerned, but you've caught up with our third place finisher, Brandon Bowie.
Didn't really run up towards the front of the field for a good chunk of this race, and then when it mattered, he found his way right up there to go get P3 tonight. Brandon, I know with the points and with everything sort of swirling around and everything, it was an absolutely wild night, I think, on your part. So just take us through the emotions behind the wheel, having to fight your way into the next round of the playoffs.
From the beginning, it was crazy. Basically decided to fall back and just decided to just take care of my tires and just kind of see how the race would unfold. Actually went green after our first or second caution, and just slowly just worked my way up. Did a lot of slide jobs on people, not intentionally, just what you have to do to try to pass without losing too much time. I thought we were going to go green to the end, and that caution came out, and I don't know how I survived or how I decided the right lanes to pick, but the only person that helped me make that decision was the man upstairs, and came out with a top 3, so I'll take it.
And I think just trying to sort through everything here, you, as we mentioned, didn't have the best pace in the middle of the race. So how nervous did that make you, I think, as you're sitting around? Or was that one of those cases where you kind of had it in your head going into this that you wanted it set up for the back end of things, especially if it went green and you knew that when it came down to it, we'd be in good shape?
Yeah, at the beginning of the run, it was a little nervous to know that I was quite a bit slower than the rest of the field. But for some reason, it's happened before. I think a couple other tracks I've ran at where I've been the slower car, but for some reason I'm pretty good on the long run. So I kind of had that same idea of kind of going into the race that maybe that's what I need to do, and it seemed to work. During I think the middle to late part of the race, I was told I was one of the quickest cars. So hopefully I can continue doing that, and look forward to, I believe I made it to the next round. Hopefully doing the same thing at Martinsville.
And we can confirm that you are correct now. We have official word from Race Control that you are one of the 8 that gets to move on and fight for a spot at Homestead, Miami. So just the initial emotions to that news, and just talk about what's going through your head now, knowing that you are one of the 8.
Oh, it's exciting. As a rookie, I didn't even expect to make the top 16. So to be able to make it this far and learn as much as I've within 30-something races or 20-something races, it's pretty amazing. The race itself was nerve-wracking, especially there at the end. But to know for sure that I made it in, I'm not sure if my teammate has made it in. I hope he did. But if not, then I'll go ahead and do my best and carry on Lodestar and try to make the Final Four.
So now we got 3 tracks coming up. You got Martinsville, you got Texas, you got Phoenix. Anyone that you're looking forward to out of those 3 in particular, one where you feel like you've got your best shot to win at and get into Homestead that way?
Actually, I believe all 3. All 3 are a very, very good shot. Last time we ran at Phoenix, I finished second. Texas has always been a very, very good track for me. And Martinsville was another track where me and David Washington battled really, really hard for the lead when we ran it the first time. So these next 3 tracks are pretty much a good chance for me to actually win. I just have to limit the mistakes, stay out of trouble, and bring it home.
And I know there are a lot of people that make it happen for you and this number 44 team. So who do you need to thank for making everything possible here to get to the round of 8?
I definitely got to thank Lodestar Racing, teammate Shane, our spotter Trey for coming on board late in the season to help us get through these races without any incidents. My family, you guys for putting on a great race as usual. And thank the man above, because he's the only person that really guaranteed myself that I was going to make it to the next round.
Well, congratulations on making it into the round of 8, Brandon, and we will see you 1 week from tonight in Martinsville.
Thank you.
There's Brandon Bowie, finishes P3 on the night and survives the final restart to make it into the round of 8. And we told him on air that he was one of the 8 drivers. We can now announce the names of the other 7 drivers who will be racing for a shot to go to Homestead and a shot to win the 2017 RealSimRacing.com Full Throttle Cup Series presented by Gary Mercer Trucking Championship. David Washington and David Comstock are there. Washington won his way in. Comstock just about outpointed everybody in these last 3 races to make it. Dylan Jones will be there by virtue of his victory at Charlotte to kick off this round. Carl Shedd will be racing as well. Andrew Freenars locked his way in with a top 2 run tonight. Daniel Eberhardt was able to make it into the round of 8, as did Brandon Bowie. And the last man in, Lionel Callisto, in the number 97 machine, will have a shot to go run everybody down and go get the title at Homestead, Miami, if he can make it into the championship 4. So, Macklin, you got 8 really, really strong guys. No real surprises yet in our playoffs. Everybody, I think, that you expected to be in the hunt, for the most part, is there. And it's gotten close, I think, at times, but the main players for throughout this 2017 Full Throttle Cup Series season are here and ready to go battle. And now this is where it really, really gets tight, because we're going to start seeing some really, really big names get knocked off at this stage. You've got more than 4 guys who could win this championship easily, who have the speed, but not all 4 of them are going to make it to Homestead. And as obvious as that is, there still will be a lot of interest and intrigue in figuring out who the drivers are that will and won't make it down to Florida.
Well, when you look at the way that the bonus points work out for these drivers, you have to feel like David Washington's in a pretty good position. He's got 20 points over second, and he has, I believe, 38 points over Carl Shedd in 5th. So he's in a pretty good spot. However, one bad race and he's right in the middle of everything. He could potentially be one of those drivers that has to fight his way in as well. If he has a bad race next week at Martinsville, gets caught up in a wreck and finishes poorly, he could be one of those drivers that has to worry. So you can't really count on the points too much just yet. Now, if he can get through Martinsville and Texas cleanly, then he might be okay going into Phoenix, but gonna have to keep an eye on that. If you're one of these drivers on the outside looking in, if you're a Lionel Callisto, if you're a Brandon Bowie, you don't really have a lot of bonus points to back yourself up. You almost have to go into this round knowing that you have to get a victory in order to move on to the next round. You could get lucky and point your way in, because one driver guaranteed will point their way in, but I think you have to approach these next 3 races as must-wins in order to move on to Homestead.
Because every point is precious, and I can tell you now, Washington will lead the points going into that. Comstock and Jones will be tied, 5 back of him. 10 back of him is Daniel Eberhardt. And then you've got Freynars and Shed, who are 25 points back of Washington, and Bowie and Callisto, who are 30 points back of Washington and 20 points behind the cutoff line that Daniel Eberhardt represents.
Yeah, when you're sitting there, if you're Lionel Callisto being 22 points out like that, that's not where you want to be. So like I said, I think for those drivers back there, it's a must win, and just you have to go out there and approach each of these next 3 races. And Martinsville, in my opinion, is the wild card race in this round, because with it being an action-packed track, half-mile paperclip racetrack, anything can and will happen. And when we were there in the spring, David Comstock was able to secure the victory. However, David Washington swept those races last year. So a couple of those playoff contenders looking to go out there and get the win. And then you got these guys in the back that are also going to be trying to steal one. It's going to be a very exciting race. I cannot wait for Martinsville next week.
And oh, by the way, Washington got the win at Phoenix in the spring as well, if you're wondering, and Texas too. So he's going back to tracks that he knows well, but it will get tight and testy throughout these next 3 races in the playoffs, and especially tight and testy next week at Martinsville at the half-mile paperclip, which will be the next stop. Next Monday night, same time, same place, 9:35 Eastern Standard Time, to get you here for the 33rd race of the 2017 Full Throttle Cup Series season. But for now, we'll conclude our coverage from Kansas and wrap it up here from Kansas Speedway. So we'll conclude tonight's coverage of the RealSimRacing.com Full Throttle Cup Series presented by Gary Mercer Trucking here on your home for sim racing, LSRTV. For my colleague up in the booth, Mr. Brian Macklin, for our lovely and talented producer, Cisco Scaramuza, for Kyle Barnes, Doug Atkinson at Real Sim Racing, and for Laura Lawson, DJ Lyon, and Evan Pasoko at LSRTV, I'm James Pike. Thank you so much for watching tonight's broadcast, and we will see you from Martinsville next Monday night.